Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining me today. Welcome to the Ketogenic Diet Show. My name is Mary Beauchamp. I'm a registered nurse and Ketogenic Diet Specialist. So you can find me at ketogenicdietcoach.com. And today I'm really excited to be interviewing Chris Williams. She has an incredible story about how she overcame her cancer and is now in remission. I was helping her along through her cancer journey, and you can find more out about keto for cancer on my website as well. And I'm just so thrilled to have Chris here with me today to tell us about her story and her journey and how she came to understand that her diet really had an impact on what was going on in her physiology. Anyone who has cancer needs to know this. Anyone who has metabolic syndrome needs to know how they can reverse this and how they can start eating differently so that they're not feeding cancer cells. I would love to just have you introduce yourself and just start by kind of telling us what got you to this point and what you had to go through before you started really realizing that you needed to make some dietary changes.
Thank you, Mary. It's been a pleasure working with you all summer or all last year, really. First of all, I want to say a couple of things. I have a very noisy house. I have 5 kids, and 3 of them are here. And so it is a little noisy coming in and out. So if you hear that, that's what it is. That's what this means. It means stop talking.
Okay, gotcha. No
but
problem.
I but I think that the other part is that I own a company called Wide Awake Business, and I'm the CEO, if you will. And between having 5 kids, living in the country, and running a company, cancer was not on my list. It wasn't on my to-do list, or it wasn't on my I need to change my life list. What I learned over the summer with Mary's help is this whole idea of how gut health is so important. And I never said that before, never really realized it or believed it, is probably what's more true. Mary turned me on to this book called Radical Remission. And Dr. Kelly Turner, a psychologist, interviewed 1,000 people who had cancer and were in remission. And I don't like to use the word remission. I like to use cancer free, because remission assumes I still have cancer, assumes I will get it back again. And that is not my plan. So, but what I really loved about this book is that she came up with these 9 factors for radical remission. And Mary, you just, the number one thing is radically change your diet.
Hmm.
So I think radical diet, take control of your health, follow your intuition, use herbs and supplements, release suppressed emotion, increase positive emotion, embrace social support, deepen spiritual connection, and have a strong reason for living. And when I started this cancer journey a little over a year ago, I didn't know what to do. I went to the allopathic doctors and they said, "Oh my gosh, you have stage 4 endometrial cancer, and you're gonna, if you don't take chemo and radiation, it'll come back stage 4, and then you know that it's pretty hopeless." And first of all, I couldn't believe that because that's not even how I think, even before cancer. And at the same time, I didn't know anything else to do. So in fear, I went through 4 rounds of chemo, and completely against my belief system, completely against everything I um, I know about. And then I called Mary. Mary was in Mexico, and I called Mary and I'm like, "Help, I need you. Change my diet, change my life, change my outlook." And so we started working together, and she put me on this really rigid, strict eating plan. And so radically change your diet, I did, using the ketogenic philosophy and really cleaning out my gut. Because here's what else was happening. And then we can change topics, but here's what else was happening. They had done all these tests on me, and all the tests came back saying genetically I wasn't predisposed to cancer. And so I kept thinking, how could that be? How could I not have any genetic reason to have cancer? And then this book, The Metabolic Approach to Cancer, which Kelly Turner wrote the foreword in it, and it's by Natasha Winters, who's a naturopath. And reading her book, listening to Mary, and really looking at the ketogenics philosophy of cleaning out your gut, because this is what I realized: if it wasn't genetic, it had to be metabolic. And because it was metabolic, then Mary was right down the right path of, let's clean out your gut, let's get you healthy. And so I went back to the oncologist and said, no, I'm not doing any more chemo. And here's what else was fascinating. So I was talking to I couldn't talk to the oncologist directly. I was talking to the oncology nurse. And I said to her, I said, before I cancel my next chemo session, which was like in a week, I need to know, does chemo treatments build on each other? Because I thought they did. I thought, you have one and you have to, it build in your system. Well, they don't build on each other. They're all a brand new treatment, brand new treatment. So I said, well, let's get a PET scan. Why would I not get a PET scan? Make sure that I either do or don't have cancer before I continue. And with Mary's guidance, we beat the first one. So 6 months later, I had that PET scan. 6 months later, I had another PET scan. And 6 months later, I had another PET scan. And the oncology people still want to say, come see me, come see me, come, you need to do radiation. And I'm like, no, what I think we're doing is working. So that's a very long story too. And I have a huge reason for living. I have a business, I have 5 kids, and I have a lot to do in my life.
Yeah. That's great. It's been such a pleasure to work with you, Chris, over the years. You're such a great client. I mean, you just have really said, you just tell me what I need to do and I'll do it. And I love when people come to me with that attitude. And I just knew that you were going to get through this in such a positive way because you were so determined and you had such a big reason why, and you weren't interested in doing anything that was going to get in the way of that. And so I just so appreciate your positivity in all of this. And
Thank you.
yeah. Okay. So you, just to back up for a minute. So you, we started working together. You had another chemo appointment scheduled, but you decided on your own to ask for another PET scan. So this is really important, everyone listening, that you have the right to ask for what you want and to find a doctor who's willing to work with you on your team as a team player, right? So if your doctor says, no, I'm not going to allow you to do that, well, then it's time to change doctors. And you will find doctors who won't be able to support you in what you're wanting. Mm-hmm. And it's not an easy road to go down because if you're going against the medical paradigm, you're going to run up against blockages. And you just have to keep navigating and finding the openings and going where you can get what you want. So just go back for a minute and just tell us what happened when you told the doctor that you wanted to have a PET scan instead of do another round of chemo and to see where you were at, because chemo is poison, you guys, everybody listening. It's poison to all of your cells. It's not just killing the cancer cells. So what you want to do is kill enough of the cancer cells that you're not destroying your whole immune system in the process, essentially. And one of the benefits of a ketogenic diet is that you can weaken the cancer cells. You put them into a weakened state so that they're more susceptible to the intervention of chemotherapy so that more of them will die. So you're sort of weakening them. And then when you go in for the chemo, they're really going to be more susceptible to actually responding in the best way possible. And your metabolism is what you want to target. And I really appreciate that you brought up the part about the gut healing, because what happens if you have a leaky gut is that everything you eat becomes a toxin. It becomes a river of toxins every time you eat it. And if those toxins are getting out through your gut lining, they're ending up in your bloodstream and your body has to put them somewhere. So they build up and they keep building up until you have, they get stored in different places, mainly in your fat cells, which is why it's so important to get the weight off if you have a cancer diagnosis, or even if you don't, because you're storing toxins in your body. You want to flush those out. So we started flushing the toxins out. Chris, I remember you can talk about your weight and how it's changed as well. You've lost a lot of weight since we started working together. The chances of getting cancer when you're overweight is exponentially greater than somebody getting cancer if they're not overweight, right? So we want to get rid of those cancer cells, get rid of those toxins. They basically build up and then your body starts to turn against itself and start attacking itself. So you can end up with autoimmunity, you can end up with cancer if the toxins build up in that way. So we want to heal and seal the gut lining. That is first and foremost. And while we're doing that, you want to basically shift your metabolism so that you start using a different fuel source, one that does not cause the cancer cells to grow, right? So if you're eating glucose, if you're eating a lot of sugars, fructose from fruit, which we're all taught is sort of the way to go, and juicing and all that kind of stuff, you're actually supporting the growth of cancer tumor cells. And so you want to do both. You want to heal the gut, and you also want to shift the metabolism. When you do a PET scan, it tells you where the glucose is concentrated in your body, and that tells you where the tumors are and where the cancer's growing, right? So a PET scan is very much a reflection of where you have concentrations of sugars or glucose in your body, right? So this is a really important thing to know. And when you cut out those sugars, then we see changes in what the cancer starts to do and how it starts to respond. So tell us a little bit about the reaction you got, and then also what you did afterwards when you got the results.
I was just like, when you were saying that, I was replaying it and I was looking for the place in Dr. Kelly Turner's book because a couple things were happening. So when I got the PET scan, I remember the day that I decided to get the PET scan and not do any more chemo. And, you can't talk to the doctor oncologist. You can only talk to the oncology nurse well, my experience, when you call in. And when I called the oncology nurse, she's super sweet. And I said to her, I said, tell me about how chemo builds on each other. That was the first thing I was curious about. And then the second thing is that I said, I want to request a PET scan. And she goes, well, we'll talk to the oncologist, the doctor oncologist, and we'll see if that's something we want to do. And I go, no, 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 you're not hearing me. I want a PET scan, and please order one and handle it, do whatever you need to do. And she goes, well, that's not our protocol. The doctor has to request that. And I go, I get it. That's why I'm calling you. And it was a good 5 or 8 minute conversation about requesting a PET scan. They actually did it. And I'm sure they were just doing their job. And, one of the things that I learned from Mary and Dr. Kelly Turner was the whole idea of advocating for my own health. It's fascinating, like knowing my personality, knowing who I am, knowing that I run a troop of kids. I run a business. I'm not a quiet wallflower kind of person. And here I was coming up against taking care of myself and knowing down to my socks that chemo wasn't the right choice for me. Or at least, maybe it was the right choice. It must have been for the first 4 treatments because it kicked something out, right? What it also does, Mary, is that it kills all the good bacteria in your system. So not only is your gut health a mess after chemo, it has to be, because all the bacteria that's good bacteria is completely killed. But anyway, so they finally gave me the PET scan, and then when I got the PET scan results back, this was funny too. I call up, so you go and get the PET scan, or I went and got the PET scan. I go to a different department. I have to wait a couple days and then get the results back. So I'm sitting on pins and needles. I try to go on myhealth.com. It's not there. And I thought, well, that's kind of odd. They said they'd have it in 2 days. So I called my oncologist doctor, talked to the nurse again, and said, hey, I can't find my report. And she goes, oh, you can't have your report until the doctor reviews it. Wait, it's my report. It's my body. This is a weekend we're coming up. And so I just kind of threw a fit. And finally, they said they'd get it in front of the doctor 2 minutes. They wanted me to have an appointment with the doctor, which I could see that, et cetera, but it was another $5. I've spent a ton of money. And I thought, no, I don't need to talk to the doctor. Let me see the report. Let me talk to my naturopath. Let me talk to Mary, and then we'll come back to the doctor. And finally, they released the report, but they wouldn't email it to me. I had to go down and pick it up. So anyway, I went down and picked it up. It was negative. And in my myhealth.com, whatever that is, the oncologist put in there, you still need to have more chemo and and finish your and do radiation. Mm-hmm. And so I called up the nurse again and I said, wait a second, I don't understand. I'm cancer free. She goes, no, you're not cancer free. You have cancer in remission. I go, no, I'm cancer free. That's what this report says. It says there is no detected cancer. So it's kind of funny reliving this. So they wanted me to come in for an appointment. I didn't go in for the appointment. I said, no, I don't need to do that. I'm going to try a couple other things. She goes, well, doctor really wants you to finish your chemo treatment, which was coming up the next Thursday. I said, no. And so what I decided to be corporately correct, I said, let's just put them on hold. We'll put them on hold. And so I put them on hold and started working, more intensely with Mary and, on this very rigid keto diet. What's interesting is I say rigid, and now I think about the keto diet, it's just part of my life. And yes, I have a marshmallow every once in a while. And yes, I have a beer every once in a while, but it's every once in a while. It's not the treat of choice or the drink of choice, etc. And feeling really good about it. I just feel healthy, and I lost somewhere between. It kind of depends on when you started counting, but I lost about 35 pounds, and so that's all good, and it's up. And now I know what to do. And what I must say is that it wasn't just the diet, right? It was getting control of unreleased trauma that I had. Everybody has in their back, and I'm totally convinced if we all could release all of our trauma from our whole entire life, we would be better. I took this grief class that bar none was brilliant. It's I can't remember who the author is, but it's Grief Recovery Handbook. And so I did lots of work on grief, and it's where you do this timeline of your life, and during the timeline of your life, you pick these relationships that you have unresolved trauma with, unresolved grief with, and you work through it. So I did the class 4 times and worked through 4 pretty intense traumatic events in my life. And man, I just feel so relaxed and free. And I don't know, between that and the diet, I changed my whole life. I moved to a new house just recently and set up a garden. And I was kind of thinking, God, I feel so adamant about this garden, I have to do the garden. And last night I was thinking about it, and I thought, the reason I did the garden is because one of the number one things from a cancer perspective is to release a lot of the stress. And when I work in the dirt and I work in the garden, it's a different modality than handling 5 kids. It's a different modality than running a company. But I can get out there and get dirty and have my whimsical garden.
Yeah.
So I really believe that, exercise, diet, gut health, the whole idea of releasing trauma. And one of the things that the trauma and grief coach said was that I also lost my touch with spirituality. And I've always just so held that in reverence. And so that was pretty interesting also. So I got back to me.
Yeah, I'm really happy you brought all that up, Chris, that it's a mind-body journey. It's not just about changing your diet. It's about radically changing your life. And in my book, I talk a lot about this, and my book's going to be coming out soon, so you guys can check that out.
Yay!
I'm hesitant to say the title because that might change too, but it's coming soon, and it's really a spiritual perspective on metabolic healing and how we can really use the mind and body together to change our health and our reality, really. So we have to really deal with these traumas and the grief and this, the emotional triggers and all of this that lives in us, in our emotional body. And so it's both. It's not just changing your diet. It's so much more than that. And I really appreciate you bringing that in. So check out my book, you guys, when it's done. If you're following me, you'll know about that. You can get on my email list. You can find that at ketogenicdietcoach.com as well. So just sign up for my email list and you'll find out when my book is coming out, and really how to step by step move yourself through these simple practices that can help you remember who you really are, your soul, and really get in touch with what your soul desires and wants. And like you said, if that means digging in the dirt, creating a garden, going on hikes in nature, whatever it is. There's so many simple ways that we can reconnect to our soul self and our true self, and it has to happen. Or we're not as likely to be able to overcome these major obstacles in our health. And it's energetic. And so one of the things that I like to really work with is the energy of healing. And that's really where this empowerment comes from, Chris, that you mentioned that it wasn't you. It's such a shift from being disempowered and being told what to do and what you have to do versus you stepping into saying, no, I'm actually the one calling the shots. I'm actually the one requesting the test. I'm the one that wants the results. And I'm requesting that from you as a professional on my team to help me heal my body. Right. So you're not the receiver of information and the one who has to do what everyone's telling them to do. It's a shift in your power. And that's where healing begins. And that is what is so important in anybody's healing journey, is to
Right.
realize that you're the one in control. You have to take control of your health in this process. And when you start stepping up and speaking what you want, everything changes because you are empowered to create a different reality for yourself. And that's, the power of the placebo effect, is that we can heal our body with our mind. And it's very subtle, but it's really important to get that shift that goes on. How long ago, that very first time when you said, no, I don't want I'm not doing the chemo. I want the results. Please send me the results. They don't need to go through the doctor. They did that. And then how long has it been since that first PET scan that was clear and you were cancer free till now? And you've had several more since then.
So that was early August. So I just had my so this is going, what, I don't know, 7 months, 8 months. No, I guess it's almost a year because
Hmm.
it's June. So it's almost a year. Um, and, it was really, my psychology was really in my way when I went back to get my PET scan just a few weeks ago. The whole psychology of, oh, what if I'm not cancer free, or what if I tricked myself, or, whatever all that messed up thinking is.
Yeah, self-doubt that comes from the ego. And
I needed some psychology support. So definitely reading Kelly Turner's book, Radical Remission. I read it three times all the way through. It's a brilliant book.
Mhm.
If you know anybody who has any ailment that's, you know, traumatic, even if it's not, or I think this book fits.
Mhm.
But the other thing that I did, and then I contacted Mary and said, "Help! I need your help. I need to radically change my diet." So we did that. But I also had some emotional support, or social support, whichever you want to call it. I deemed these 4 or 5 women as my 911 women. And I had multiple of them because they're all super busy, and it's hard to get a hold of anyone. If I want this one, I might not get a hold of them for a couple of days. And so I had a meeting with all of them, and I said, this is the kind of support I need. And early on during chemo, they brought food. They helped me handle kids. I have older kids, but they still live at home. And so we did that. It was also during the pandemic. So we had a pandemic ritual. Everybody who came into the house had to take off their clothes, drop them in the washer, go take a shower before they could come in the main house. My daughters were always wiping down everything, to make sure that, no bad germs came in the house. And the 911 girls, are women, but I call them my 911 girls. They supported me at I don't know, to the nth degree. They went to doctor's appointments with me. Mary helped me. I'd call her up and I go, I know I'm not your normal client, but I need help on this. I remember a day I called you up and I was just getting so frustrated with the diet because I couldn't do it all by myself. And I said, I can't do this. And she goes, yes, you can. Just eat these 7 foods. So she gave me a list of just 7 foods. Don't tell me what I can't eat. Just give me my list of 7 foods. And I ate those 7 foods for, I don't know, 6 or 7 months. In I can cook lamb, beef, a few vegetables in any format you want. So, that was super helpful. And just that social support of during pandemic. We used to have, they'd come over and visit me and we'd sit on the porch 6 feet apart, and have a little. So there were no hugs happening, but we did connect, and it was very helpful in the supportive perspective. So a combination of radically changing my diet with the ketogenic diet and the gut health, radically taking control of my life and of my health, which I didn't. I am not a nurse. I am a mom and a businesswoman. I know nothing about gut health. I know nothing. So, Mary made it super easy and she tailored it to fit my needs, which I thought was super helpful. And I'm not sure I could have done it if it was any other way. And then, keeping exercise, like I would go running after chemo, not the day of chemo, but the next day of chemo. And people are like, you did what? You went running after? I go, I am going to beat this. My body has to be strong. And, laying in bed, feeling bad about myself. And Mary's like, you can't run that much because you're on this really rigid diet. So walk. So we went on lots of walks, and, it was definitely helpful.
I just want to interject a few things. So yeah, exercise is great, and it's really great for your mental health, your endorphins. I mean, it's wonderful to strengthen your body and your cardiac, function and all of that. And just for the listeners, it's good to make sure you're keto adapted and you're well into your keto adaptation phase before you start doing heavy running like Chris was used to, right? So we kind of eased in through that, and she got keto adapted really well, super fast, and was checking your ketones and blood sugar, and that's really crucial so that you know where you're at. And it takes a little bit of time for your metabolism to make that switch and to make it really efficient. Because this is usually something that most of us have never asked our body to do maybe in our whole lifetime. And one of the best ways to strengthen our immune system is to become metabolically flexible. Okay, this is the reason why people get really sick and even die from COVID, is because they are metabolically compromised. Okay, so this is one of the best ways to boost your immune system, is by creating metabolic flexibility. Okay, by allowing your body to have two fuel sources instead of just one. So this is a crucial part of this whole process for everybody, not just people that are struggling with cancer. This is like I said, a tool that you can use for the rest of your life if you feel like you're getting sick. If you went off the rails and went to the birthday party and had the cake and the bagel with cream cheese or whatever, you can always get back to that baseline, which is getting your metabolism to shift over, cleaning house, triggering mitophagy, where your body's going to actually go in and clean up the dead mutated material, the DNA that needs to go, the broken cellular parts that it can go in and recycle and remake and start cleaning house on a deeper, way deeper level, right? So we can eat a clean diet, but that's kind of like sweeping your house. But when we do keto, it's really like you're lifting up the rugs, you're sweeping under the nitty gritty, you're getting in the corners, you're getting the stuff that you don't normally do when you're sweeping your house, right? So it's the deep cleaning, right? This is the cellular detox that we're talking about. And the only way to get into those nooks and crannies is to get keto adapted. And there's just a ton of scientific research about this, you guys. So Google it, YouTube it, you'll see it, you'll find it. You'll find the doctors that are really doing the research and putting out the data about this. And it's been going on for, this is not a new diet. It's a diet that it hasn't been created by a human. It's not something that anyone can take credit for, right? This is what is wired into our DNA. It's just an inevitable fact of what happens when you reduce carbohydrates in your diet. And so it's brilliant. That's one of the things I love about it is, nobody said, oh, this is, the latest, greatest diet that people should be doing. No, this is what your body knows how to do. And this is what you can tell it to do and trigger it to do just by reducing your carbohydrate intake. And it's so effective. So I love that you brought up also that when you do chemo, oftentimes your hair falls out, right? Because it's killing the most vulnerable cells, those cells that that actually are proliferating at a rapid rate, like your hair, and also all the mucous membranes in your body. When your hair falls off your head, you also have little tiny hair-like cells all lining your gut, microvilli, those very delicate cells that are turning over so rapidly. And that's what's lining our gut. Your inside lining of your gut looks like fingers, and all along these fingers is like hairs, and they're called microvilli. And they all really die off too, because you're killing these cells that regenerate so quickly. So your hair on your head falls out, but the hair in your gut falls out too, and it also is really damaging to the healthy microflora in your gut. So really, if you've had chemo, you need to spend some time building that back up and healing the inside lining of your gut. And the only way to do that is with a particular way of eating that isn't just low carb, right? It's also very non-inflammatory. That's one of the things that we were working on with you, Chris, a lot too, in your diet is, it's not just that you can go eat low or take out your carbs and eat low carb foods. You still can't have those inflammatory foods, the like the phytates, the oxalates, and the lectins. These are all low carb plant foods that are really popular in the keto community, but they're not necessarily good for your gut. So you have to take out those inflammatory foods. And this is one of the things that I talk about in my book. It's really the keto gut healing protocol, and that'll be available soon for anyone to download as well. So you can find out more about that on my website as well. So I just wanted to put that out there, that the keto gut healing protocol deals with inflammation, and that begins in the gut. So we got to seal and heal the gut lining before you're going to stop the toxic river going into your bloodstream, and then your body is trying to deal with this onslaught of toxins, and it doesn't have time to deal with bacteria and viruses, right? It's so overwhelmed that your body's just doing the best it can. And when those toxins accumulate, your body can turn against itself, and then you end up with an autoimmune disease or a cancer. This is how we can really clean house on a deep cellular level, is with this diet, and with a shift in the mindset, and really the commitment to your self-care practices and your self-love, right? Which is sort of at the baseline of that. And I remember when you had told me a couple times, Chris, this is so overwhelming, I just can't do this. And, even just dealing with taking all the supplements in a day is overwhelming, let alone trying to eat in between and figure out what time to eat and what time
And
to
run a
not eat.
business and 5 kids and a little
Yeah.
farm. It's like, oh my God.
Yeah, it's a lot. And so you nailed it. I mean, this is, people come in and they come to me and they're so overwhelmed and they don't know where to start. And we just kind of break it down, step by step. Let's just do this week. We'll talk next week, or whatever. And just baby step it in. And really, looking back, this will simplify your life in the kitchen. Would you not say, Chris? Because you're now, you're doing your 7 foods and maybe a few other things now, but intermittent fasting is a big part of it. And when you're fasting, you don't have to worry about what to eat. So it really
Right.
will simplify your life in the kitchen. And it feels overwhelming at first, because anytime you change anything in your life, your ego, your psyche is gonna get a little upset, and it's gonna really stir up a lot of distress. And
Yeah.
once you just realize, okay, that's my unconscious mind that wants me to stay the same and not change and be comfortable and never step out of my comfort zone. And once you kind of learn how to deal with that inner self-talk, then you're unstoppable. Then you can do anything, and you can overcome all the self-doubt and the questions and the turmoil that your mind chatter will put you through. So it's a big part of all of this is the mental piece. And so I really appreciate you bringing that up with the books. I think those are probably 2 of the most important books anyone could read, whether they have cancer or not.
I just feel like a combination of your protocols, and I wouldn't call it a diet. It's really an eating plan for life, because I can't imagine ever going back. I wouldn't even, in fact, I can tell when I've veered off a little too far. It's like my body knows, I know, I can tell. My stomach doesn't feel good. And it's kind of funny, I can eat something that seems seemingly healthy and my stomach doesn't feel good. And I was like, why is that? And I'm like, oh, it had this in it, or oh, it had that in it. So that really makes a difference. This book, Radical Remission by Kelly Turner, is a brilliant. I actually bought both of these books and took 3 oncologists at 3 different hospitals, because I kept looking for somebody else and none of them would take the books. It just fascinates me. It's like we get to, as the public population, retrain our healthcare system because it's not working. There were so many people in the waiting room at chemo and the oncology doctor, and I just felt like, wow, I have the magic secret and I don't know how to share it. So thank you for inviting me to the podcast. I'm so excited to read your book. It's time. So congratulations on that, and it'll be fun to watch the launch. And for all of you who are listening, if you know anybody, recommend Radical Remission. Metabolic Approach to Cancer is also a brilliant book. It's kind of dense. Radical Remission is just stories about people and every walk of life, and people who have tried chemo, tried radiation, did this, did that, and then discovered this radical remission. So thank you for having me. I so appreciate it.
Thank you for being here, Chris. You are changing the face of medicine because you're sharing this message with people that are going to then bring this to their doctor, hopefully. It has to be from the ground up. It's not going to come from the top down. The top down is what we have right now, and it's a system that's broken. And we have to take responsibility for our own health and for changing this dynamic. And it's going to take a long, long time. I remember when they first discovered that, you shouldn't x-ray pregnant women because x-rays were harmful to the baby. And this was proven, in the pediatric journals, and there was lots of studies about it. But until they actually stopped doing this practice, it was about over 40 years. So they knew that it was not healthy to x-ray an unborn child, but they didn't actually stop doing it for over 40 years later. We're at the cutting edge. We're at the beginning of a shift that isn't going to be seen in medical practice for maybe another 40 or 50 years. And we don't have that much time. You didn't have that much time, Chris. We're already in our 50s, right? So we have to take this upon ourselves, and there is a way, and you can do this. And I just want to put that out there that, Chris, you're a shining example of someone who is taking control of their health and really changing this broken model, this medical model. And it's not the fault of the doctors. That's what they're taught in medical school. And it's like paint by numbers. They're not going out of lines. They're not picking their own colors. This is what they are trained to do and what they know, and that's all they know. And so
we're going to help them.
Yeah, exactly. So thank you, Chris, so much.
Go find her. It's important.
If you liked this video, please share it, like it, and subscribe to my channel so you can get more content like this. And I want to personally thank you for having the courage to step into the space of awareness.